It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is Sashen, CEO and founder of Feel the World and at Xero Shoes. Steven's a serial entrepreneur who has never had a job. He's a former stand-up comic and award-winning screenwriter and a competitive sprinter, one of the fastest men over 55 in the country, and maybe the fastest 55-plus Jew in the world. He and his wife, Lena Phoenix, co-founded the footwear company Xero Shoes, creating a movement which has helped hundreds of thousands of people live life feet first with happy, healthy, strong feet in addictively comfortable footwear. Steven and Lena also appeared on Shark Tank, where they turned down a $400,000 offer from Kevin O'Leary. Steven, Sashen, welcome into the corner office.
Thanks. I need to update that because I just turned 60 a couple of weeks ago. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, listen, we always like to start off with the early days. Steven, and hear a little bit about how things got started for you. Tell us a little bit about your early family life, where you grew up, brothers and sisters, mom and dad.
Well, when a mommy loves a daddy very much, do we need to go back that far? So I grew up outside of DC with entrepreneurial parents. My father was a dentist, started and had his own practice. Right. My mom, like me, I don't think she ever had it. Well, no, she had jobs, but she did a lot of consulting. She started a couple of businesses. She ended up, her last thing, she started a promotional product business. I have a younger sister who bought that business. So cool. My sister and I, it's funny, we were never really close as children, but we fundamentally ended up in the same world. We're both professional marketers. Yeah, and it's literally, we become very good friends in the last 20 years.
I think once bit of an age gap between the two of you?
Just 2.5 years. Yeah. But I think once we got to be adults and frankly, she wasn't having to follow in, I don't know if the better word is footsteps or wake, but apparently I left a kind of big wake in high school, junior high and high school that she did not enjoy trying to surf over. And so once we got past that, she's just a wonderful, brilliant human being. And we she's got her own little biz. I've got my biz, and entrepreneurial things. I vividly remember, I just had a flashback. Did you ever get, I'm trying to think of what these magazines were that would have like cartoons or comic books that would have all these things in the back, like ways of making $100 a day. Yeah. I would respond to those. I remember, I remember one of those was metal Social Security cards. So you'd be able to sell these ideas of like an indestructible Social Security card. And I remember getting the samples and thinking, that's not going to happen. So, my dad had a lot of shoes. And so I got 25 cents for polishing shoes, 50 cents for the boots. It's amazing how often those things needed to be polished.
Now, you said both your parents were entrepreneurs. Was that, kind of a topic of discussion? You remember growing up or any kind of early lessons or learnings that you had that kind of inspired those things?
I think the only lesson apparently was, oh my God, this is exhausting. Come home and have a drink. So, which is not a lesson that I absorbed because I'm not a drinker. But I think if anything, just the hard work thing was kind of obvious. Yeah. No one ever talked about it. It was never really a topic of conversation. It was just, mom is starting this consulting thing. Okay. And she would complain about being a consultant because people pay her a lot of money to not listen to what she says, which she found unsatisfying. Right. Ironically, it was just kind of in the air. Unlike friends of mine who grew up with entrepreneurial parents where they were learning how to look at a balance sheet and a P&L over dinner. We never
Right.
had that.
Yeah. Yeah.
My dad pretty much left work at the office other
Mm,
than complaining about it.
right.
And my mom pretty much the same thing. So it's weird that it happened this way.
Yeah. Well, great family life. And again, grew up in the city. Whereabouts?
Bethesda, Maryland, to be exact.
Bethesda. All right.
But then as entrepreneurial things go, where it really kind of kicked in for me legit was when I was 12 or 13-ish, I started doing magic. And I
Ah,
very quickly put together an act and was doing kids' birthday parties
nice.
and somehow
Nice.
made a decent amount of money. And I look back and I realized I was hired by some like big deal political people who had a lot of clout and money. And I never thought about it then, of course. I was 13, 14, 15. But that was kind of interesting. And then when I was 16, I started street performing as well. The first thing that I did on the street was actually it's a gimmick deck of cards that makes it look like you're an amazing sleight of hand magician. And the
Right.
idea was to demo this thing and then sell the decks. And I bought like 1,000 decks.
Yeah.
And I very quickly realized that when I'm performing, the performance looked so good that people didn't get the feeling that they could do it
They could
too.
do it themselves. Right.
So
Oh.
then I went, all right, then I'm just going to write an act and be a street performer and work for tips, which I vividly remember the first time I came home doing this. My parents were aghast that my dad thought I was essentially a beggar or cleaning up after hookers or something. And so I came home and they were really not happy. And then I dumped like $300 worth of change and bills on the ground and they were ecstatic. So,
Oh. So you have been
exactly.
earning a living.
Yeah, yeah. That's basically what I did. I just kept doing street performing through college,
Yeah.
and then somewhere in the middle of that, this is the end of this part of the story. I went to New York to be a street performer there, and within a couple of weeks, people were ripping off my bits. And
Ah.
I went to this big deal magic shop and said, "What do I do about this?" And this one other very famous street performer said, "Write an act that nobody would dare steal."
Mm.
And so I came up with an act that involved a little bit of magic, some sort of, this is going to sound a weird phrase, comedy gymnastics. I'd have to explain it. It's much too long. But the thing that got a crowd and kept a crowd and made the money was I was then at the end, I would walk on broken glass in my bare feet. I had like a giant 50-pound pile of broken glass. So I'd take off my shoes, I'd walk on it, I'd put some 200-pound guy over my shoulders and do the same thing,
Oh my
blindfolded,
goodness.
and then I'd take off my shirt and lie down and have some people jump on me.
Oh
And
my
and
gosh.
the interesting thing is there was only like two or three street performers in New York who could get a crowd that was that big when you had an act like that.
Right.
And so I went from making, like $50 a show to sometimes $500-$600 a show.
Wow. Wow.
And
Terrific.
so, yeah, that
What
was a
about all
pretty
that
cool thing.
broken glass though? Didn't it have some damage done on you?
No, no. I got to tell you, the story of getting the glass was fun. When I came up with this idea, and it wasn't my idea, it was in a magic magazine. There was a picture of this old Chinese guy jumping off a step stool onto a big pile of glass. And the
Oh,
guy who wrote the article asked him, what's the secret? And the Chinese guy said, there's no secret. And I just took him at his word that it was all about physics, which it
right.
is. Spoiler
Right.
alert. And
Yeah.
I went around to the bars in my neighborhood and I said, "Hey, can I get like your empty beer and wine bottles?" And they went, "Yeah, sure. What are you going to do with them?" I went, "Oh, I'm going to break them up and walk on it in my bare feet, the broken glass." Oh, yeah, we need to keep those bottles for inventory purposes.
They don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah. So finally, I walk into this one bar directly across from where I live, but I didn't go into it because it was like this really high-end hoity-toity place. But I was out of options. And I said to the bartender, "Yeah, can I get the bottles? How come? I'm going to break them up and walk on it in my bare feet." And he just looks at me for about a minute and goes, "Sick." And then he hands me a big box.
I love it. I love it. Well,
Yeah.
I have to ask, how did this all impact your schoolwork? I mean, were you a good student in school, or
Um,
did the draw of the street performer kind of
well,
sidetrack you there for a
well,
minute?
street performing life, you don't have, you have a really simple schedule. You work on Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday,
All right.
and then you're done.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to work that much, you don't work that much because you're making a bunch of money. So it didn't really impact anything at all in terms of schoolwork. And I hate to admit it, but yeah, I was a stupidly good student.
Doesn't surprise me.
Actually, want to hear
And
something funny? Wait, something I'd totally forgotten about. When I was in college, I guess it was my senior semester. I graduated a semester early. It might have been in my junior year. I can't remember. But in the undergraduate department, they had some program where they took two people and put them in the entrepreneurial program of the business school in the MBA program.
Huh.
And I have no idea how or why they put me in that, but they did. And I did not do well because it involved research and which is not my thing. And I'm sure my partner, who actually was an MBA student, was very much unhappy with me. But
Love it.
but it is ironic that even though I didn't do well in that program, I did learn some interesting things in that program. And here I am, 50 years later or whatever, 40 years later, having kind of proven that, yeah, I guess that is the path that I was going to be on.
Well, for obvious reasons, your comment about your work as a student are taken to heart. Duke as an undergrad and Columbia, getting your master's is no small feat. So tell me a little bit about choosing those schools and the direction you took for your university.
Yeah, you're giving me way more credit than I deserve for any of this. So first of all, the thing when people say, "Oh, that's a good school. How'd you get in?" I go, "I don't know. I sent them an application. They said yes. What the hell do I know?" So for Duke, I grew up again in Maryland, and my criteria for schools was pretty simple: somewhere warmer than where I lived.
There you go. Had to go south.
Yeah, and Duke seemed like a good choice, and for whatever reason, they accepted me. And then Columbia. So after college, I guess this is another entrepreneurial thing in a way. I was a stand-up comic for a living. In fact, the reason I graduated early was I'd kind of dropped some of the magic, started doing comedy. They opened a comedy club in Raleigh, North Carolina. I became the house MC, and the guy who booked that room booked 10 other rooms. And he said, when you're ready, I can just give you a 10-week tour. And so I graduated early so I could go on tour. And after a year on the road, I moved to New York City and was working at the clubs in New York. And similar to street performing, there's not a lot you can do during the day.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of free time. And one of the guys who drove comics to certain one-night gigs told me that he was applying to film school. And I went, that seems like a good thing for me. I like writing comedy. I've been an actor. And so I applied to Columbia Film School kind of on a whim. And again, for some crazy reason, they admitted me. And that went very well. I won some awards as a screenwriter. And that led to my next entrepreneurial thing. I ended up inventing what became the industry standard word processing software for film and television writers, because I was so frustrated with what existed then. It was getting in the way of my thought process, and I was losing ideas. And then my undergraduate degree is in cognitive psychology, and I just came up with this really, bizarre thing of understanding what your brain and your hands are doing when you're typing a screenplay. And I got rid of every extraneous keystroke that gets in the way of the creativity just flowing out of your brain, and then found programmers to turn that into something real.
Cool. And then did you sell that company or that business?
I tried to, and then I found out that there was three partners who were looking to buy the company from me, guys who I'd known since I started the business. And in the middle of the negotiations, to make a long story very short, I helped two of the partners discover that the third one had been embezzling from them.
Oh.
And so that fell apart, and then the company kind of fell apart too. The product still exists, and it may be getting resurrected. I'm waiting to hear from my programmer to see if that's true, or if I've got to write it off and call that a loss.
Right. Did you have a lot of employees in that particular?
I think at the max we were about 20.
Right. And pretty much the first company you run, right?
Yeah.
I mean, coming out of school. Yeah. And tell us about the film career then. So did you actually go and do screenwriting?
No, because what happened was it was actually two things simultaneously. One was finding out that there were very, very few good jobs, especially for sitcoms, or more accurately, there were very few sitcoms that I would have been able to write for where I wouldn't have wanted to go home and vomit because the shows were so bad.
Right.
And those shows were pretty much populated by guys who were all Harvard Lampoon alum.
Right.
And so that discovering what that world was like, and then starting the software company kind of coincided. So I'd written some scripts that had gotten a bunch of attention, but it seemed like a much safer bet to start a software company than to become a professional screenwriter.
Right. Well, you became an athlete somewhere along the way, because that has a big play into what we'll talk about in a minute. So tell us when that started. When did you become a runner?
Well, I started my first athletic thing started when I was 7, where my parents were just trying to find a way for me to burn off some energy, and they kind
A
of
little
gave
bit
me
of ADHD there, maybe, Stevie?
I'm too old for Ritalin, otherwise that would have been the choice. So they gave me like a catalog of things from the Jewish Community Center, and
Okay.
happily, the Jewish Community Center did not require Jewish people to be the coaches for many of the things, or that would have limited them tremendously. But in fact, I'm not even sure it was all Jewish kids who practiced there. But suffice it to say, I thought diving sounded like a good idea, so I
Huh.
became a diver when I was 7. I quit when I
Not a
was
scuba diver, but a
no
diver off a
springboard
diving board.
diver. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I quit when I was 11 because the pressure was getting to be too much for me. And then when I was 12 and went to junior high school, my one of the 3 gym teachers was I think like 5-time national and 3-time world tumbling champion,
Oh,
an amazing gymnast, an incredible coach, and a mind-blowingly good teacher. And on the first day when the 3 teachers were introducing us all to what that program was going to be like, he just quietly stood up, stood behind the other 2 guys, did a standing backflip, and then sat back down. And I went, yeah, I want to be that guy.
hmm.
So I spent the next 6 years. Well, I spent the next 6 years competing. When I went to Duke, I stopped competing, but I kept training till I was in my 30s. And when I landed, twisted and snapped my meniscus. But during that time in high school, junior high and high school, I was sprinting as well. But then everyone got taller than me, and I
Hmm.
stayed the same height. So I switched to pole vaulting and long jump, and then
Oh,
stopped after high school and didn't pick up sprinting again until I was 45.
right, right. And active runner now, marathons? Do you
Oh,
do?
oh, oh,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. Those things, I don't like driving 26 miles. So, no, I'm a 100-meter outdoor, 60-meter indoor guy. I hear
Okay.
there's things at the end of the tracks called, what are they, turns? Is that what the turns? Yeah.
You don't like those.
I don't have a GPS watch, so I can't do those.
You prefer the straightaway.
I just run really fast in a straight line.
Yeah, cool, cool. Well, that's probably a good segue into your current venture. Now, tell us a little bit. Now, is Feel the World the company that you founded around Zero Shoes, or
Yeah.
give us a little bit of the impetus of that?
Well, what happened was when I got back into sprinting, I was getting injured pretty constantly for a
Yeah.
couple of years. And a world champion runner suggested that I try running barefoot to see if I learned anything. Now, I'm not going to
Hmm.
suggest that people run barefoot. You are about to hear how it changed my life, but don't, freak out. So I took off my shoes, went for a run with a bunch of other barefoot runners. And again, I run 100 meters. I'd never run more than a mile in my life, and did not enjoy one moment of that.
Yeah.
And on that first barefoot run, I was just so transfixed by the experience and just so curious about what happened if I changed my gait in various ways. If I ran faster, ran slower, ran the same
Right.
speed but moved faster or moved slower. I mean, just anything I could think of.
And what were you running? Were you running on concrete? Were you running on a track or
Everything,
grass?
grass,
Yeah.
concrete,
Right on line.
trails, wooden
Yeah.
bridges. I mean, you name it. We're in Boulder, Colorado, and it was just whatever we could run on. And
Yeah.
at the end of his first run, which I could have kept going, but just the group decided to stop. I turned to someone who did have a GPS watch, and I said, "How far was that?" And she said, "Oh, that was a little over 5K." I was like, "Sorry, what?"
Wow.
And I was blown away.
Yeah.
And but the most interesting part was I ended up with a big blister on the ball of my left foot.
Hmm.
Now, I've learned that many people in that situation would have said, "Oh, see, this is nonsense. I got a blister." But for whatever reason, I thought, how come my right foot's okay?
Yeah.
And
Right.
so my second barefoot run, where I've got a gaping hole in the ball of my left foot, I thought if I can find a way to run that isn't hurting, then I'm probably not doing the thing that caused that problem to begin with.
Hmm.
So I'll give it 10 minutes. If it doesn't work, I'll try again after the healing occurs. And 9 minutes and 30 seconds of agony later, in one step, everything changed.
Hmm.
And what happened was my form changed because, frankly, I was paying attention to the good foot and wondering what it was doing correctly, and then my brain just kind of figured it out, which is what brains do. They don't. If you keep putting yourself in a position of mild discomfort, your brain's going to find a way to get you out of it.
Right.
So what happened is my form changed and my running got faster, easier, lighter. My injuries went away. That's when I became a Masters All-American for the first time. And I wanted that barefoot-like experience,
Hmm.
but I wanted to be able to get into restaurants without arguing about whether it's legal. It is, by the way. Um, and my wife wanted me to come home without getting my dirty feet all over our white carpeting.
Right.
So I made a pair of sandals based on a 10,000-year-old design idea, and people started asking me for pairs of their own. So I made, I don't know, 50 pairs or so.
And did you do this from like old tires or
I just found some rubber from a shoe repair place.
Yeah. Okay.
And some cord from Home Depot,
Yeah.
and just put it together. And after about the 50th pair, a guy said to me, "I've got a book coming out on barefoot running, and if you treated this little sandal making hobby like a business and had a website, I'd put you in the business, or sorry, I'd put you in the book."
Yeah.
So by that point, because of my software company, I'd become an internet marketer. So I've been an internet marketer since 1992. I'd built hundreds of websites when he gave me this opportunity, and I rushed home and pitched this incredible opportunity to my wife, who assured me that I was a complete idiot and wouldn't make any money. It was a waste of time. And so I promised her I wouldn't do it. And then after she went to bed, I built a website. So that's how it began. And
this is back in 2009,
2009. Yeah.
2009. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I needed a name for the product in the company, and I came up with Invisible Shoes. Interestingly, I couldn't get invisibleshoes.com. I got invisibleshoe.com. And when it became very clear within 6 weeks, in fact, I said to my wife, when she kind of growled at me the next day, I said, "This will be a good case study for a search engine marketing business that we had just started as well." And I said, "I'll own all the keywords I care about in 3 months. Then we'll see what it does." And I was wrong, because it only took me 6 weeks. And at the 6-week mark, it became clear this was going to be a real thing. So we incorporated as Feel the World Inc. And then about 2 years in, or a little less than 2 years in, I met a guy who was the former VP of marketing for a multi-billion-dollar fitness company. And the first thing he says when he sees my sandals and knew that we were called Invisible Shoes, he said, "I can see them." I said, "Yeah, but it feels like you're not wearing anything." He goes, "I can see them." So to make a very long story very short, that's when we rebranded as Xero Shoes, Xero Shoes.
And where did that come from?
Okay, then you're giving me the medium-length story. We hired a marketing agency that was well recommended. It was all people who had escaped big agencies. They started a small thing. It was just 3 people. And part of it was the rebranding. And they came up with a bunch of names, all of which were, I think the technical term was horrible. And one was, I'll spell this for you. You have to tell me, in fact, all right, I'll spell it first. XOICS. What is it?
Oh, Zoiks. That's what I'd say.
Maybe. I don't know. I said, don't know how to say it, don't know how to spell it. We're an internet-based company. That's not going to work. Right. And they tried to justify it. And I said, if you have to explain it, it's not the right one. Trust me.
Right. No, exactly.
So a day or two later, after a track practice, I'm sitting in my car and I'm thinking, I like the X thing. Yeah. How can I use the X thing? And then Xero popped into my head, and I came back for our next meeting and said, "We're going to be Xero Shoes." And they're like, "I don't know." Yeah, I just checked it with a friend of mine who's been a advertising agency guy and copywriter for 40 years, and he loves it. So I'm going with his opinion.
There you go. And you bootstrapped or sandal strapped this.
Very good.
Was it your own money? Did you go out and get venture capital? How'd you kind of just get
thank you, credit cards with 0% interest and zero cost balance transfers.
Right. Cool. Never brought in any outside money from outside?
About, when was this? Maybe, I can't remember, 1.5 years in, 2 years in, I'm not totally sure. We were at a birthday party for a 70-year-old friend of ours who, as we were leaving, said, "What are you up to?" I said, "Well, we're trying to raise some money." He goes, "Oh, you should meet my neighbor who runs a small family office for some billionaires." And we had a really great chat. He said, "Well, we mostly invest in like cash flow based real estate projects." And I said, "Oh, like parking lots and laundromats and things." He goes, "Yeah, exactly." But, he says, "We keep about 10 or 15% for some high flyers." I said, "Oh, so you're a Nassim Taleb investor?" And he says, how do you know Nassim Taleb? And I go, "Oh, my wife and I had done some day trading," and long story. So we just hit it off. He was an athlete, loved what we were doing. And he had to petition very, very hard for us to get, I think maybe it was $100,000 line of credit. Wow. That to abbreviate that story, over time became $1.5 million. Right. So that was our first investment of all, basically just debt capital. It was expensive money too, but we were growing so quickly that it really didn't matter, frankly.
Right. And you didn't give up equity too, which is a nice
No, we didn't give up any equity. And then a couple of years later, we got an SBA loan for, I don't remember how much that first one was. I don't remember, but that was pretty entertaining. We had a stack of paper literally 2 feet high that we had to go through for that. It was pulling teeth, putting them back in, and pulling them out again to get that loan. But that worked out well. And that was, again, just debt finance. So we stayed debt financed until 2017, where we did an equity crowdfunding raise and raised a little over 1.1 million from people who loved what we were doing, and gave away about 4.5% of the company for doing that.
Yeah, cool. When did you know you had a real winner, Stephen?
Day one.
Yeah.
Because we launched with a freaky little do-it-yourself running sandal kit in the end of November. And the first sale we made a day after I launched the website was to somebody in Minnesota where there was 2 feet of snow on the ground. And so I thought, okay, we're on to something. And then some little time later, my wife and I are walking in downtown Boulder, and a pack of teenage girls run up to us and they look at our shoes and go, "Oh my God, those are sick. Where do you get those?" It's like, all right, we're on to something.
Yeah. Super cool. And tell us a little bit that you're comfortable with regards to where the business is today, number of employees, sales, and maybe some of those endorsements you've been picking up.
Because we did the equity crowdfunding raise, we're an SEC reporting company, so I can only report things that are publicly documented. And you can find all these, by the way, at xeroshoes.com/SEC. That'll redirect you to the Edgar website where all those things, SEC filings are. So in 2021, we did $33.6 million net.
Wow.
Over 4 million EBITDA, but I don't remember the exact number. And now, I can do the end of let's say we're somewhere between 60 and 70 employees then, and that's where we are now. Yeah. And it's just been amazing, the people who are responding to what we're doing. Lena has a great line, which is, there's no reason to start a shoe company. There's enough of them already.
Lena is your wife.
Yes. And co-founder.
And partner in the business, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So there's no reason to start another shoe company unless your shoes change people's lives. And we have tens and tens and tens of thousands of reviews from people saying that we've improved their life in many ways. Things that they couldn't do before, they're doing now, or just finding comfortable footwear for the first time, because we make shoes.
They're not just running shoes, right? They're walking shoes.
Casual. We make casual and performance shoes, boots, and sandals that people use for everything from taking a walk to climbing Kilimanjaro to running ultramarathons.
Right.
And so it's been really fun. The people who show up, much to our surprise, wearing our shoes. Ewan McGregor. Just 2 days ago, Billie Eilish was photographed wearing our shoes. Don't know how she got them. This morning, we found out someone who's going to be on Survivor in the middle of September was wearing our shoes on the show. Tony Horton, the guy from P90X, is a good friend now and big fan of ours. He called me, tracked down my personal cell phone number, and called me on a Saturday night or Sunday night. And I looked at my caller ID. I said to my wife, "This is Tony Horton, the guy from P90X." She goes, "If he's so famous, what's he doing calling you?" Good point. So I let it go to voicemail, and then I checked, and it was him, and I called him back, and we really hit it off, and he's been a big supporter of ours. And we've got NBA players, professional golfers, professional football players, professional baseball players. I mean, it's been very entertaining watching how people are really just gravitating to what we do, because the experience of wearing our shoes is just undeniable. You put them on and they have a wider foot-shaped toe box, for example, instead of squeezing your toes together. And they're really, really lightweight. People have said to us they've gone to bed still wearing their shoes because they forgot to have them on.
Love it.
So, love it. So yeah, it's the experience that sells it. And I'll give you a number related to that. Over 40% of our sales are from repeat customers.
Wow.
Which in footwear is really unusual.
Yeah. Well, are they doing both recreational as well as the performance shoes? Is that
the way the brand has grown from the product side is because people tell us what they want next. When we were a do-it-yourself sandal kit company, people would say, "That's cool, but I'm not going to make my own." So I came up with a way of doing a ready-to-wear version of the same product. That's great, but I don't like, that design. Can I get something with a different kind of design? Yeah, we can do that. That's cool, but what do I do when it's cold or winter, or I have to go to the office and I need shoes? So in 2016, we launched our first closed-toed shoe. That's great, but what about a running shoe? So we did that in 2017. That's great, and then it just turned into now 30 plus styles.
So how do you keep that dialogue with your customer base? Is it social media? Do you have folks that kind of spontaneously come out to you? Do you have focus group panels? How do you do that?
All of the above and much, much more. The biggest thing is that I never wanted to be the face of the brand. Because I thought that at some point, if we're going to sell this thing, they don't want me attached to it. But it didn't work. because I would make a video showing how to make a do-it-yourself sandal kit. And it would literally be my face for 5 seconds saying, hey, let me show you how to make this. And then people would recognize me and talk to me. And I went, and I know as a marketer, people do relate to humans. So we decided to kind of have a mom and pop flavor to what we were doing and be very, very accessible. I send an email, or an email gets sent out. And for some people, this will be shocking to hear, automatically, that when people opt into our list, I send them an email saying, just want to let you know we're real people here. And in fact, here's my personal phone number. And give me a call if you have any questions. 3 times a week, tops, I get a phone call where the conversation sounds like this. Hello, this is Stephen. Oh my God. And so people don't believe me.
They don't believe it. Yeah.
No. So, and we also knew that providing good customer service is not really hard considering what people are used to. So having a dedicated, smart, and large customer service team is very important. And then on social media, we're super, super active. And again, part of it happened because the way Facebook worked in the early days, to open a business account, you could only do it if you already had a personal account. Yeah. So I am linked inexorably and inevitably and forever to the business account. So people tag me all the time and they start conversations with me personally, and I jump in on those. And the other thing about customer service. Well, yeah, that's the thing. If people are talking about you, you want to be part of the conversation, whether it's good or bad. And so we're hyper participatory on social media. And my favorite thing is when someone complains that, they emailed us and we haven't responded in a month. We go, yeah, here's where we responded immediately after you got the email. It must have gone to your spam folder. And they go, oh, oops, sorry.
They go back and say, oh, yeah, that's where.
Actually, sorry, they never say, oh, sorry. Just to be clear. So, and then we also just really encourage it. When people become customers, we give them the opportunity to become part of what we call the inner circle, where we let them participate in product ideas, picking new colors for products, some fun marketing things. So in 2009, the book Born to Run came out, which really catalyzed this whole natural movement, minimalist, barefoot running thing. And I used to go to bookstores and I would put business cards in copies of Born to Run. So then I made 50,000 bookmarks all about us, and I sent them to the people in our inner circle so they could go to bookstores and put those in copies of Born to Run or any other book that seemed relevant. So, we just get people involved in doing things that are fun and let them know that we're real people on this end.
How many consumer comments, suggestions you guys think you get a week or a month?
Oh God. Well, considering that we now have like 52,000 reviews, hundreds a week.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. What's been some of the biggest challenges you've had, Stephen?
Everything. So when I'll tell you this story, 7 months in, we had met some guys who'd been in footwear for 35 years. And they took us under their wing a bit, helped us with some logo design and found some sourcing for us in Asia for the products that we were starting to make. And they said to Lena and me, we really believe in what you're doing. This natural movement thing is the most important thing for footwear. And we believe in you. And we would start this business with you, but we've been in footwear so long, we're not stupid enough to try and start a shoe company. And our response was, yeah, we're hyper optimistic and naive. That's the way things get started. So away we go. The biggest, let me think about this for a second. In no particular order, big challenge number one is that we've been growing so quickly year over year, and we couldn't raise real money because going to banks, they're looking at your historical numbers and giving you money based on history, and we need to look a year, 2 years out. So that was so finding money has always been the biggest challenge. Yeah. The second one is making things is hard, and making footwear is really hard. There's just a lot of humans involved in every part of the process, and making our footwear is even harder because it's so different than the way they make traditional footwear, normal footwear, that we have to retrain people on every step of the process.
I was going to ask you, do you have a lot of former shoe industry folks in the company, or is it better to come without that? We do now. Yeah. So Dennis Driscoll is our chief product officer, and he joined us 10 years ago, and that happened
So coincidentally, luckily, crazily, he's walking his dog, which normally his wife does. A friend of ours is walking his dog, which normally his wife does. The dogs started hanging out together, so the guys started talking. And our friend says, "Oh, what are you doing?" Dennis said, "Oh, I'm the chief product officer or head of global product design at Crocs." And our friend said, "Oh, my friend Stephen and Lena have a shoe company," which was totally not true. We're selling sheets of rubber and string company.
It was during the kit days.
Yeah, exactly. So, but Dennis said, here's my phone number, pass it on. And I sat on it for months and
Yeah.
then finally just sheepishly called the guy. And we had lunch, and what was supposed to be a half an hour turned into 4 hours.
Wow.
And I said, I'd love to work with somebody like you someday. And he was just turning 60 at the time. I said, but like maybe someone 30 years younger trying to get their feet wet. He goes, well, what about me? I mean, I think what you're doing is amazing. I said,
Wow.
I don't think I can afford you. He goes, I just retired. I went, and you're hired. So,
I
so
love it.
yeah, so Dennis has been in the business for 45 plus years.
Yeah.
And so he was really the thing that spearheaded it. And we still had there were, for whatever reason, and honestly, I literally can't tell you why. We had a lot of people who really believed in us and what we were
What
doing
you're doing.
from day
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And as we met more people in the footwear industry, they just kept saying, how can I help? And they helped, even seeming competitors. Everyone was really, really helpful.
Most of the shoes made in China, or do you have U.S.
Um,
manufacturing as well?
it's literally not possible to make our products in America in the same way that it's literally not possible to get domestically made versions of the devices we're using to have this conversation.
Right. Right. Yeah. So is it mostly coming from
It, it,
Asia, South
yeah,
Asia?
it's 98.5% of performance footwear is still made in China, and that's where we are.
Right.
And when people say, "Oh, well, you can go to Vietnam," it's like, guess what? All the materials are still coming from China, and all the people managing everything are still from China.
Yeah.
And unless you are a big company and you own your own factory and all your own employees, it's literally full. There's
Yeah.
nowhere that we could manufacture outside of
Right.
China right now.
How's your leadership style changed over the years, Stephen, if at
I
all?
don't have a leadership style. I'm barely joking about that. Or I guess let me say it this way. If you want to describe my leadership style, it's if you want to be rude, you could call it laissez-faire. If you want to
Hmm.
be more accurate, it's I stupidly work on the assumption that everybody is competent and as committed to this as we are.
Right.
And happily, almost all of our team now is like that. But we've had a number of people along the way where I assumed that was what they were, but they proved themselves not to be. And so we've gotten rid of those. Here's a weird thing. When I was in film school, I was on a film set with the director Tony Bill. He was shooting a movie called Five Corners with Jodie Foster. And after a week on the set, I said to him, I'm amazed by your set. I've been on a lot of film sets. Yours starts on time, it ends on time, no one ever yells at anybody, and
Right.
everything gets done. How do you do this? And he said, I've been doing this for 40 years, and basically I just kept firing people until I ended up with all the guys who could do what I wanted, and here they are.
That's one way to go about it.
Well, and it's not that he was, being mean about it. It's like um, some people.
It's a culture thing,
It's a
really.
culture thing.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
competence thing.
Right.
It's a personal thing. We've had people leave us during COVID because they had to spend time with their extended family that were all
Sure.
somewhere else and they couldn't work remotely.
Yeah.
It's tricky. I mean, anybody who runs a business knows the most difficult thing is always the human part.
What do you look for when you're looking to hire people and invest in them to join Zero Food?
I tell them that we only want people who beg us to work here.
Hmm.
I'm like knock down the door repeatedly and tell us that they need to work here.
Yeah.
And
Passion.
just that they believe in what we're doing and they
Yeah.
want to be part of it.
Yeah.
And then I also look for people who have an entrepreneurial spirit, which is tricky because I've many times brought people in, shown them how to do what I do, and then they've immediately been smart enough to leave and start a small agency.
Right.
So there's a balance there. I'll say ironic. This is how do I want to put this? Well, one of the things that I look for with certain positions, like our director of e-commerce, he's someone who fits the bill perfectly. He had worked with agencies. He had worked with other e-commerce companies. He
Right.
started his own company and it didn't go as well or as easy as he wanted. And he didn't no longer had the risk tolerance for striking out on his own. So someone who's tried to do it like multiple times, if they try to start an e-commerce company and it just didn't pan out, but
Right.
they have the skills, they're my guy or woman. I also ask for an honest answer to the following very strange question.
Yeah.
I say, give me at least 3 reasons why I shouldn't hire you. and they have to be legitimate reasons.
Right.
And people are often stymied. And I'll give you an example. If it was me, I would say if you're looking for someone who's organized and gives you reports and documents and flowcharts, I am not your guy. If you need someone who's not going to make your HR people's head explode by the things that come out of his mouth, I am not your guy. And what's the third one? If you expect me to not tell people that I think they're doing something wrong, when I see that they're doing something wrong, in my opinion, again, I'm not your guy.
Right.
And if people can't respond to that with real answers, I know they don't have the self-awareness that we really need to deal with a growing company.
I love it. Well, as I said, we're just about out of time, Stephen. Okay. Always ask one last question, and that's, what kind of career and life advice would you give someone that's listening? Maybe they're, 10, 20 years younger than you. Maybe they want to be an entrepreneur themselves and, run their own company. What would you tell them?
Get a government job with a pension instead.
Why is that?
Well, I'm at the age now where I have a lot of friends retiring with their government jobs or other jobs with pensions. They literally don't know how to spend all the money, and they're having just a blast with all the free time. I have not had in the last 13 years a what's the word? Vacation. No, I don't think that's it. And so, up until recently, I never had benefits. Again, another word, benefits and insurance.
Benefits.
Yeah, these words are very confusing to me. So when I say get a government job with a pension, I didn't know when I was 20 that there were jobs that I could have gotten that would have been very satisfying for me, but not striking out on my own. Yeah. And if my saying that makes anyone think, maybe I should get the right kind of job, then you definitely should just get a government job or any kind of job that pays well. If you're a real entrepreneur, there's nothing I need to tell you, because you will undoubtedly pursue your most likely stupid idea. And I say most likely stupid idea because anyone who's been an entrepreneur for any amount of time, most of our ideas are kind of stupid. And then if you're really, really lucky, and I'm being totally legit when I emphasize the factor of luck, then you'll stumble on something that you can make work. And that where the macroeconomic situation does not take precedence over you and all of your efforts and everything you're trying to make happen. So the best thing I can say, actually, I will give one legit piece of advice. If you're going to start something, figure out the fastest, least expensive way to prove that people that you've never met will give you money for what you're doing. And then prove that there's a big enough market to spend your time pursuing it.
Yeah, great stuff. Stephen Sashen, CEO of Feel the World and at Xero Shoes. Thank you so much for sharing your story into the corner office.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO's story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.